The job of the leader really is to inspire people to go to some place that looks hard, but as a team, they can do it together. In a startup company, that's what you have to have.
What do you call someone who helped shape the very foundation of Silicon Valley? A university president? A tech pioneer? Or maybe the godfather of innovation?
Do you have that on business cards? What is it to be the godfather of Silicon Valley?
Coming to the Valley when I came, when the computer industry was just beginning to be established in the Valley. And I remember the early days, I would have to get on a plane to fly back east to talk to the big honchos in computing because they were all back east. Now they come out to the West Coast to visit us.
You've written a book on leadership. You've seen these kind of leaders of the major companies of Silicon Valley, major startups. What, in your opinion, makes a great leader who can move people forward?
Most startup companies I know have gone through a difficult time when things look really grim and it looks like it's going to collapse. That's the time when the leader has to get up and say, we're going to do this, but we're going to have to double down and really work to really make it successful. That's the mark of a great leader. The lesson you have from technology is...
John, it's great to have you on the show. You've spent your career in academia, both as a professor on the administration side, but also you've spun off two companies that you've been the co-founder of. I'm curious about your perspective on what makes a good company to spin out of a university. Should professors become CEOs or should they recruit other business people? What is your perspective on that whole ecosystem and universities as a source of companies?
What I think was fundamental in both the companies that we spun out was we had a deep understanding of a new technology and a technology breakthrough that was really revolutionary. It's a good thing that technology was really great because in the first company, we're three engineers that didn't know anything about running a business. And I mean anything. We didn't know how to put together a business plan. We didn't know what margin was. We didn't know anything about the things I had to learn along the way. And it would have been much better had we worked with somebody with more of a business background early on. We went and we found somebody who was a great initial acting CEO that took us through the early stages and things. But we made a lot of mistakes because we didn't understand the business side adequately. We also had another hurdle, which I advise. We had to both invent a new technology and come up with a new business model. And I've recommended to people, don't invent a company that has to do both. New business models are fine. Companies eBay is a great company built out of a new business model, right? We're going to put auctions online and let people buy stuff online. Google is a great technology business model focused on a new technology. Google had the great advantage that Yahoo had already proved that advertising could be the way to monetize on the internet. So it was pretty easy for Google to say, let's use search. We'll monetize search. Yeah, that sounds good. So doing both of those was really hard. And I learned that the first time around. Obviously, the second time around, I knew a lot more. And I could think about who to hire as a CEO, how to recruit the business side of the company. But young people, it's hard when you're a technologist to really understand that there are a bunch of things on that business side of the company that you really do need to understand and you really need experience with. And it makes a big difference.
I'd love to get more your recommendations. I mean, you've written a book on leadership. You've seen that issue from multiple hats and perspectives. What makes a great leader, whether that's, a leader of a board of directors, a leader of a startup, a leader of an academic institution? What, in your opinion, makes a great leader who can move, people forward?
So I think of great leadership beginning with a little bit of humility. And people say, why is humility critical? We have examples of people who are not very humble, who seem to be doing okay.
Some current examples, yes. We won't name them, but some current examples, yes.
But for me, humility is a grounding thing in that it makes it very easy to say, I'm not the smartest person in the room about everything. I need the entire team to work together. And great leaders are people who really lead teams. They build a team that's collaborative and can work together and do something that they couldn't do as individuals. And so the job of the leader really is to inspire people to go to some place that looks hard. It looks really hard to get there and risky. But as a team, they can do it together. And that really begins with humility and collaboration and figuring out how to make that teamwork and being authentic with people. People like to know, you can say, this is going to be hard, but we can do this. We can get this job done. We can do something really marvelous. We can, and when in a startup company, That's what you have to have. You have to have that. And most startup companies I know have gone through a difficult time when things look really grim and it looks like it's going to collapse. That's the time when the leader has to get up and say, this is a great team. We have a great technology. We're going to do this, but we're going to have to double down and really work to really make it successful. And I think that's the mark of a great leader.
Who has really impressed you with your leadership? Because you saw a lot of these kind of leaders of the major companies of Silicon Valley, major startups come through Stanford. You knew some of them. Who impressed you?
The people I've known over the years have all been great leaders in different ways. Steve Jobs was a fanatic about user interface, making this thing natural, making it really work. And he really he drove that in a way I've never seen anybody do it before. And of course, returned to Apple at a time when the company was really in trouble and turned it around. Eric Schmidt was the ideal leader to get Google started, the ideal person, because he was technical enough and he had the business acumen. And so he could work well with Larry and Sergey and really build the company into a really interesting combination. I think those people are going. The initial leaders of Intel were terrific people. I mean, Andy Grove and Bob Noyce and Gordon Moore are incredible, both technically very deep, but also great leaders. The classical example, I think, in Silicon Valley would be Bill Hewlett and Dave Packard. They invented many of the flattened organizations, get rid of the hierarchy, have offices out with the rest of the team. And I still remember the day when we dedicated the Gates Computer Science Building, and I got to introduce Bill Gates to Dave Packard and Bill Hewlett, who he had never met. And to have these two guys that started the real first startup in Silicon Valley in the 30s, right? Meet one of the later stage entrepreneurs that started the software entrepreneurship sector was really a great opportunity.
You've, of course, mentioning all these other people. You're being a little bit maybe humility or humble yourself. I don't know of a single other person who walks around with the title, the Godfather of Silicon Valley. Do you have that on business cards? What is it to be the Godfather of Silicon Valley?
No, I don't. That's a Mark Andreessen. I mean, for me, coming to the Valley when I came at a time when the computer industry was just beginning to be established in the Valley. When I came, it was mostly semiconductors, right? And magnetic storage, actually. But to be at the beginning of that and a time when the what was happening in integrated circuits just transformed the entire industry. And I remember the early days, I would have to get on a plane to fly back east to talk to the big honchos in computing because they were all back east. Now they come out to the West Coast to visit us. So it's a really interesting change that's occurred over time.
I'm joking, but partially seriously, as the Godfather, what is the future of Silicon Valley? I mean, we've certainly seen, more centers of innovation open up around the world. We've seen what used to be, you had to be in Silicon Valley to get venture funding, no longer necessarily be the case. What is the future of Silicon Valley and this entire ecosystem and technological roadmap?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Valley will continue to be healthy. It'll continue to be a source of innovation and creativity. After all, you have two of the greatest universities in the entire country located in the area, with Berkeley and Stanford. So it'll continue to have that. But the Valley also has limited carrying capacity. It has various infrastructure problems. So I think it's nice to see and think about getting other major technical centers built around the country. And I think that'll be a healthy thing for the country over time as well.
It seems like you need talent. I mean, it's an interesting confluence of sort of technical innovation talent. Of course, you need entrepreneurial talent, people who have vision. But then you also need, I guess, managerial talent as well, people who've been around the block, right? It's different to be an entrepreneur or a leader versus a manager. You need all of that to sort of mix together.
Yeah. Mark Zuckerberg is brilliant. but he needed Sheryl Sandberg to get that company going and to get it really moving along, I think. And, Sheryl brought a set of experiences that Mark simply never had, right? So there's that marriage of capability that's really critical.
What lessons can we take from the world of technology that we can apply to other things? What is the lasting legacy of just all of this innovation here? It sort of seems like now innovation technology is colliding with politics. It's colliding with, sort of our socioeconomic stability as a country. It's colliding with many other things. What is the bigger lesson from technology that we can understand?
So I think the lesson you have from technology is innovate to survive. And if you look at companies that have faded over time, it's because they failed to innovate. And the thing that the Silicon Valley reminds you of constantly is it's that new startup coming from below that's going to eat your lunch. It's not the big competitors out there, and you should remember that. But think about that new startup that innovates, that's going to bring out a new technology that's going to undermine the core technology. Now, we might ask ourselves, why can't we innovate in the way we govern and run the country as well as we've been able to do around technology? And maybe that'll be a challenge for future leadership in Washington.
And of course, Google, Alphabet famously was known for the slogan. I don't know if it still exists now, but don't be evil was the slogan that Google was known for. Can we do this without being evil? Can we innovate? Can we win? Can we compete? Can we do that? Is that possible?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So I think, for Google, the trust relationship between Google and the billions of people that use it every day to do things is fundamentally important. And so we made a commitment early on that we would always provide what we think are the very best search results. And you can depend on that. And that trust relationship was really crucial. I think the trust relationship is going to be crucial going forward between technical companies and the users of their technology. And keeping that trust relationship is vital to keeping a positive relationship between technology companies and society.
How much of Google's success is innovation technology, and how much of it is actually stewardship of the Google brand? We don't think of Google as a great brand, as like a Nike of the world or an Apple of the world, but is it? Is there great value in the brand itself?
It's hard to say. I mean, certainly we regard our relationship with our users and the dependability of our search function as vital to the future of the company. And so to the extent that the brand is associated, I'll Google it, it's associated with that phrase, it's vital, but that's something that's can't be taken for granted. It's a constant investment to ensure that relationship is there.
Any other recommendations for operating a board of directors well? I mean, you're a non-executive member of the board. As I understand that probably means one of your primary functions is making sure board meetings run well and making sure that the board has an opportunity to make a meaningful contribution. What is your recommendation for other companies, those listening, investors listening too, that need a well-run board of directors?
I think the hardest thing to get on a board are directors who can add strategic value, who can challenge the team and get the management team to think about where they're going and to articulate their reasoning really well. There's a lot of pro forma things that boards have to do. Those are not the most important. Those are important, but they're not the hard thing. The harder thing is to really say, how do we bring an external perspective that's different than the management team might have and get them to think about things in an open and a progressive way? And that, I think, is the key thing that we try to add. Obviously, you need a management team that can work. You need a board that can work well with the management team. So how do you build that relationship that the board can challenge the management team, but the management team and the board are still on the same side of the equation?
I think in recent history, what is the best example of the challenge of the management team versus the board? I think of OpenAI. Sam Altman kicked out brought back in all of that. Would that happen at Alphabet? Is that possible? Like, what was your perspective on all of that?
I don't think it would happen in Alphabet. There was governance misalignment, I suspect.
Final question for you is, what's next for you? In your godfathership of Silicon Valley, what is coming up? What does still need to be done, or have you done it all?
I'm actually very committed to what I'm doing, which is trying to build a scholarship that will recruit the next generation of potential leaders. And if anything, I think what I've learned over the last 5 years is this is even more desperately needed than we thought. And we need it. We need better leaders in the corporate world. We need better leaders in the nonprofit world, and we certainly need better leaders in government. And it's a global problem. And I think so. I'm really committed to this effort that I started now, 8 years ago. But I think it can really make a difference over time.
There you have it. John Hennessy, former president of Stanford University, current chairman of the board at Alphabet, professor of electrical engineering and computer science. Thank you. And we look forward to what's next for Silicon Valley and the world ahead.
Thank you.